We're here minutes after the trade deadline has come to a close. Trades can possibly still come through, but it seems like everything's settled down. Talk of the league is obviously Cleveland, so let's start there with their first trade of the day. Cleveland traded IT, Channing Frye, their first round pick, not the Nets pick. And a huge play this year, acquiring Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance. Trade got some youth into the roster, Clarkson and Nance both being 25, I believe. But it really is just a bigger problem. IT's gone, and the Cavs are better for it. It's clear that their experiment wasn't working, and I like that they decided to just cut their losses and start building elsewhere, because that was not working at all. It's been suspected before, I believe, that IT may have been a locker room problem in Sacramento. But let's focus on this initial trade, Jet. How do you like flipping IT and some change for Clarkson and Nets?
So, at first, I wasn't a big fan. I thought they got way too young with inexperienced players, gave away a first-round pick, which then hindered them from using their Brooklyn pick to upgrade the roster. But now, knowing everything that we know, I really like this trade. Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr., like you said, are both 25 years old. Isaiah Thomas is about 30 and Channing Frye is 34. So you get younger, you get more athletic. Larry Nance Jr. will bring you some defense. He's a pretty good rebounder. He has an offensive rebounding percentage of 12%, which is pretty good. He can block shots, and he just has the size that you need to move around the roster, so you can play small forward all the way to, I'm guessing they might even put him at center at times. In a league that's going away from centers, the Cavaliers basically have none, and that's not a big problem because of the players they picked up, like Larry Nance Jr. Jordan Clarkson will be able to play like that role off the bench where he is the scorer. And like you said, Isaiah Thomas was just not meshing well with the Cavaliers. Although everything he was saying was true, the Cavaliers were sloppy, they were low intensity, they weren't good on defense. They just were not prepared to hear that from Isaiah Thomas, and especially not through the media. And so this move really gets the Cavaliers younger, it gets them more athletic, and for the Lakers, it's going to open up 2 max contract slots for them next season. With Isaiah Thomas being expiring and Channing Frye, I believe, is expiring as well, they're going to have loads of cap space. They're going to have a fun player for this year, although Isaiah Thomas was really hampered by that injury. Low burst, getting a lot of shots blocked, and just not having the same athleticism that he has in years past. So this move was really good for both teams.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's a foregone conclusion that the Lakers will cash in this offseason, but they can turn that cap space into more picks and save for 2019 if they take loaners for a year. But they'll be ready no matter what. The Lakers and Magic did really well for themselves, really turned this organization around, because for a while there, it was looking like they weren't going to be able to clear up the cap space they needed. They had been talking about getting these all-star players for a while now, and it was just hard to see the path. So they capitalized extremely well, and I like what they're doing. But that wasn't the only trade the Cavs made, obviously. They flipped a combo of D-Wade, D-Rose, Amon Shumpert, and Jay Crowder, and ended up with Rodney Hood and George Hill somehow. They're also expected to pick up Kendrick Perkins, a good locker room presence, and have a spot open for the buyout market aftermath. Created a pretty big trade exception that could be used later. And they saved some money in tax dollars, which might help in the buyout market. It was a complete overhaul of their roster for Cleveland in the middle of a pretty important season. LeBron James' contract looming. Nobody really knows what he does, what he's going to do. And they didn't get a guarantee even before all these trades went down. What's the difference between the Cleveland of yesterday, and who was the 3rd seed in the East, and the Cleveland of tomorrow, who is going to have pretty much a new team all around?
So I think the biggest difference is their defense. Like I said, Larry Nance Jr. can play some defense. He's not as good as advertised, but he's pretty good. George Hill has always been known as a good point guard defender, and he's going to be especially motivated finally being on a good team. And Rodney Hood has been touch and go, especially with injuries, but he is also a good defender at the wing. And wings right now are the most coveted assets in the league, especially for a Cleveland team that with LeBron James can make a finals appearance whenever they want. And so that was the biggest thing to me heading into this trade deadline. They needed to make moves because while you have LeBron James, there's only been about 3 players in the league like this. Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. You are almost a lock for a finals appearance. And it makes no sense to cut your losses and play for the future when you can make it a finals right now. And instead of building around a roster that may be good 10, 12 years from now, that you might make a deep playoff run. You have that player now where you should go after it. And them picking up the players they did is just a huge step in that direction. Also, they brought in some shooting. I mean, they lost some shooting, obviously, but they brought in even more. George Hill is shooting 45% on 3 attempts per game, and Rodney Hood is shooting 39% on 6 attempts per game. So that plus their defense, they just make them ideal players for this Cavaliers roster. And if you look at the reasons why the Kings and the Jazz did this, it's pretty simple. The Kings offload that crazy George Hill contract. He's making about $20 million a year. And for Utah, they obviously wanted to cut their losses with Rodney Hood because that relationship was a little bit strained with the injuries and everything. He wasn't quite the player they hoped he would be. And the Jazz obviously don't want to see themselves in the playoffs just yet. So they picked up Derrick Rose. They got Jay Crowder. They're going to cut off Derrick Rose. Jay Crowder's not the player that everyone really thought he was. So they are obviously hoping for a high lottery pick this season to put next to Rudy Gobert, to put next to Donovan Mitchell. And for the Kings, they lose some of the contract, like they said, and they're going to get even worse than they already are, hoping for that first overall pick.
The rest of the league did not sit idly by while the Cavs had some fun. Can run through some of those trades. Detroit continued their time-honored tradition of trading second-round picks. This time was a little bit different. They added some much-needed wing depth, and they got a pretty good player from not much of anything in Jameer Nelson and James Ennis. This was a pretty good trade for Detroit. How are you liking this move? And honestly, Detroit, just like the Cavs, they're looking extremely different than they did when the season started. With the Blake Griffin trade earlier, Detroit has doubled down, even tripled down on this year. What do you see them finishing the season as, and in terms of a team, and how do you like them going into the playoffs?
So obviously on our last show, I was a little bit down on the Pistons. They didn't have the depth, went all in on a player that's going to max out their contracts, and they just did a phenomenal job at this trade deadline to upgrade their roster and to make them a real threat for the playoffs and in the playoffs. James Ennis is a big upgrade from Bryce Johnson, who probably wouldn't make much impact on that Pistons team. And Jameer Nelson is a ball handler. He's a contributor. He's a distributor, I should say. And he shoots 36% on about 2.6 attempts per game from 3. He was a little disappointing in his last few months in New Orleans, but he is an upgrade on Ish Smith. As much as Ish Smith pushes the pace and gets the ball down the floor, he doesn't give you much in the shooting department or the passing department, and Jameer Nelson is really going to be an upgrade in that. And when Reggie Jackson comes back, he's going to be an ideal backup point guard. I think this makes the Pistons a lot scarier for teams in the Eastern Conference, and I'm just really happy with what they were able to do.
Staying in the Eastern Conference, the Knicks got Emmanuel Mudiay from the Nuggets in a 3-team trade. Devin Harris, Doug McDermott also included, I believe, going to various teams. But I guess the biggest question right now is, Emmanuel Mudiay, a long-term stay in New York, is this really what they want from the point guard position?
I think something that they didn't do with the Willie Hernan-Gomez trade, they did here. They're getting younger, and that's exactly what they need to do. They have their 12-man lineup would put them about, I believe, 7th oldest in the league. So getting Emmanuel Mudiay makes them a little bit younger. They're a team they're rebuilding still. Ntilikina is not going to be there for a while. Kristaps is obviously already great, but he has injury history and he's younger. So he's not going to make a big impact in the playoffs just yet. They need to get guys around him that are in a similar timetable. And as much as Emmanuel Mudiay disappointed in Denver, he still has a chance to become something in New York along with all that other young talent there.
In the West, the Suns got a point guard in Elfrid Payton. Magic cut ties, only able to get a second-round pick, but I think that was as good as it would get, especially it being the Suns' second-round pick. It's not bad. Do you think the Magic could have got something else out of Elfrid Payton, or do you see these last 4 years as lost time, or do you think this was the right move to make in a time where they weren't really feeling Elfrid Payton?
I think Orlando is essentially a talent black hole. Elfrid Payton was billed as a pretty good player, and he's a high draft pick. And it just seems Orlando continuously loses those guys for nothing or for second-round picks like they did here. And for Phoenix, I think this is just another smart move. Like the Knicks, they have a young team, they have a young nucleus, and Elfrid Payton fills in with that timetable that the Phoenix Suns have. And if he doesn't become anything, they gave up a second-round pick for a top 14 pick talent. So it's really a good deal for Phoenix, and just Magic has to hope they hit on a lottery pick at some point.
Before we get into the rest of these other trades, do you think that any team hurt themselves by not making a move before the deadline, like a Memphis?
Yeah, so I think a couple teams really hurt themselves here. I think Boston had a chance to get Tyreek Evans, and so it was a shame that the Grizzlies weren't able to get anything for expiring contract, and that the Celtics didn't feel like they should make a move in this, what I think is still wide open Eastern Conference, and the Boston Celtics are really, really good. And Tyreek Evans would have made them even better. And I understand that a deep playoff run isn't the goal, that a championship is the goal, but a finals appearance or a Eastern Conference finals appearance are still big. It gets you in the dance, gets you in the game, and I think the Celtics could have really upped their chances if they were to get Tyreek Evans, and I think the Grizzlies could have got young players for a team that is not good right now. So I think those two teams really hurt themselves by not making a deal.
All right, Jet, let's hear them. A lot of other teams made trades this trade deadline. Not all of them were noteworthy, but what do you got? What did you see around the league? What did you like? What got you a little excited?
Yeah, so I just wanted to hit just about every trade that happened here as best as I can, as quickly as I can, because not all are very exciting. One interesting thing is the second round pick given to the Cavaliers from the Heat for Dwayne Wade. He's coming back home. Just like that a lot because it just obviously gets Dwayne Wade back into a city that he means a lot in. He was not going to be part of a championship Cavaliers team. That became evident with his defense. He was obviously pretty good on offense this year, but with the defense being what it is, he's not going to be able to be a worthwhile contributor on a championship team. And for the Cavs, this means that Cedi Osman gets more minutes. He gets part of that younger core that's in Cleveland now. He has the hustle, he has the defense, he has the awareness. His shooting could improve, but he's a slasher, and he's going to be a part of that rotation now that I think is going to be a really important piece for them and just fits nicely next to everyone else they picked up. And then also the Pelicans traded Dante Cunningham for Rashad Vaughn to the Brooklyn Nets. Cunningham has been an eyesore of a player this season. He's pretty much contributed some rebounding, and that is it. It cuts about $500,000 off the books for the Pelicans, and for Brooklyn, it just gets them a player. They have no prospects of any draft picks or anything like that, so it didn't hurt them much. And then Toronto traded Bruno Cabello for Malachi Richardson. The Kings again cut with another could-be talented wing player. I watched him a lot in Syracuse. He did some nice things. Toronto picks up just another lengthy wing with athleticism that they could maybe one day morph into something. I mean, no one thought the second unit that they have now would be what it is, and maybe one day Malachi Richardson will be part of that too. And the Blazers trade away Noah Vonleh for a player I've never heard of for cap space because they gave up on him.